Hello, everyone. Is everyone as tired as I am?
Yeah,
Hey
hey,
there.
Councilman Mitchell.
It's crazy.
It is.
Oh,
It
y'all-
is crazy.
Are y'all as tired as I am?
Yeah, man. Ugh.
Imagine imagine how Chief Reynolds must feel.
I tell you, all of King Street is my district. Hello,
Yeah.
everyone. East Side is my district. Everyone as tired as I
Yeah.
am? They got me going. I tell you, they got me going.
Well,
Whew.
thank you for everything you're doing.
I'm trying. I tell you, it's rough.
I drove down this morning early, coming down to my office, and it has a different feel when there's nobody on the street and you see all those boarded up
right.
buildings. It gives you a different perspective.
Yep. I think you all remember on council when I was talking about the city. If you don't watch out, we can become a ghost town.
This is Jennifer. Just to let everyone know, we are up on YouTube right now.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you. Thank you, Jennifer.
Jennifer's like that little voice on our left shoulder talking to us and reminding us that, by the way,
It's not bad.
thank God bless her,
Little angel.
his little angel.
Oh boy. We got about 1 minute.
Is the mayor's computer working now?
I guess.
Were you asking me?
I said, is your computer working now?
Well, right now it is. It cut off on me suddenly without any rhyme or reason. I seem to have it plugged in right. So hopefully it'll stay going for me. Whew. How's everybody doing?
You're good.
So, and we got a number of city council members here. Understand Vanessa had a dear friend who passed away, so she's taken a couple of days off.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
And so Jennifer's with us here today. I don't know if Councilmember Seekings, have you signed on yet?
I am.
Okay.
I am here, although I'm not sure how long my signal's going to last.
Okay. Well, thank you for
So,
being
but thank you.
with us.
My pleasure.
I kind of thought we'd meet this morning to get this out to the public, but I think they know what we're considering, so they could make plans accordingly. So anyway, without further ado, since let's see, are we at 1 o'clock? We're at 1 o'clock. I'd like to call the meeting to order and ask Jennifer if she would kindly call the roll for it.
Councilwoman Del Chapo,
Here.
Councilmember Shaley,
Here.
Councilmember Saccharin,
Here.
Councilmember Mitchell,
Here.
Councilmember Brady,
Present.
Councilmember Gregory, Councilmember Waring, Councilmember Seekings,
Here.
Councilmember Shade,
Present.
Councilmember Griffin,
Here.
Councilmember Appel,
Here.
Councilwoman Jackson,
Here.
Mayor Tecklenburg,
Here.
I think Gregory is muted because I see him on.
And I see, yeah, I was about to say Councilmember Gregory is with us.
I'm here.
Yeah. So, and again, I do this without prior notice, but Councilmember Griffin, could I call on you to open us with a prayer this
Yes.
afternoon? Thank you.
Dear Lord, we thank you for this day. We thank you for the opportunity to make our city whole again. We ask that you be with us. Keep us strong. Keep us faithful. Help us always act in the way that you would. Help us be shepherds and help us lead the flock as your greatest shepherd, Jesus Christ, did for us. Ask us represent our people well. Look out for their best interests. Ask all these things in your name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you so much, and thank you for your leadership, Councilmember Griffin, on all these matters we've been experiencing lately. So, and Chief Reynolds, are you on the line? Are you in attendance here? Maybe not yet. So he's supposed to join us shortly, and he'll be available for questions and give a report. But I will share with you, and I think we all saw that last night surely went a heck of a lot better than Saturday night. We had appropriate resources in place, with thanks again to our many partners, including I'm thankful to Governor McMaster for activating the National Guard. They got here last evening about 7 o'clock. And they're on the ground with us here today, and so we're thankful to their support as well. So we did end up making about 40 arrests last night. I think about 35 were made before the 6 o'clock curfew began, and then a few more, I think 5 more, followed afterwards. Things went very well as far as they can go for this type of situation. I did feel that it would be wise for us to continue at least for another day with a curfew. And as it turns out, I was on the phone just a little bit ago with Chairman Summey, Charleston County, and they plan to again consider at 2:30, when they have an emergency meeting, an additional evening of curfew. In Berkeley County, Councilmember Del Chapo, you may have seen, notice, has announced a curfew. And I believe Dorchester, don't have confirmation of this, but Chairman Summey told me that he believed Dorchester County was as well. Apparently, some notices have gone out on social media for some demonstrations to occur in the Tri-County region outside of the city of Charleston late this afternoon and this evening. So there's still anticipation of some activity this evening. So once again, I think it would be wise for us to have a curfew. When I woke up this morning, as we discussed yesterday, I felt that limiting it to the peninsula would be appropriate for us. But as you saw what we did yesterday afternoon, when the county did the whole county, it didn't make a lot of sense that the county had a curfew in parts of our city and we didn't. And you get into jurisdictional and legal matters. So when up above does an action that we're congruent with, it's good to be in sync with them. So we could approve this as written for the peninsula, again, giving myself in consultation with the chief of police the ability to expand it. But I'd tell you in advance that as soon as the county says they're going to have a countywide curfew, that I would extend the boundary to include the entire city. So, Chief Reynolds, did you ever sign on?
Mr. Mayor, should we go ahead and make that motion?
We could.
Yeah, I move that we move forward with a curfew at your discretion, just like we did yesterday.
Second.
Okay.
Mayor,
Yes, ma'am. Susan?
this is Susan again. So we do need the 2/3 vote to add it to the agenda, and then the 2/3 vote to approve.
So
great.
moved.
We have a motion.
We add it to the agenda.
Second.
Okay. All in favor of adding to the agenda, please say aye.
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 The ayes have it. Now for the motion itself, which has already been made. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Okay.
Aye.
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 Marie had her hand up, Mayor.
Hold on, Councilmember Del Chapo.
I just have a, like, kind of logistically, so Berkeley County's curfew goes into effect at 8 p.m.
Right.
Whereas city of Charleston is 6 p.m. And, I understand right now we're just doing Peninsula, but then if we wind up expanding it to the entire city like we did yesterday, how does that impact the portions of the city inside of Berkeley County? Would we fall under the 6 o'clock or the 8 o'clock?
Well, Susan, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I would have the authority to split it and say that when we expand the boundary to the whole city, that the portion of Charleston County be congruent with Charleston County's time, and which I believe will be 6 o'clock, and that Berkeley County section be congruent with the Berkeley County order of 8 o'clock. Is that okay?
That's correct.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's what I would do.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Jackson, then Sacrum.
Thank you. I know we've already voted on the 6 o'clock start, and I personally don't think I have any, disagreement with that, but I'm sure all of us received at least one or two notes from restaurant owners in particular who were hoping that we could move this curfew start time back to 8. So I didn't realize that Berkeley was making that decision. I guess I'd appreciate you and the chief, just for the record, helping us explain why we think 6 is that much better, because it really does cut off any opportunity for people to be in a restaurant in a neighborhood that is essentially safe, or at least, so far into the whole scene. So if you could just give us the understanding so we can continue to support you on that.
Right. So, it's pretty simply stated, bad things more likely happen after dark. And I watched very carefully on Saturday night when the curfew went into effect, that it took a good hour or so before it seemed really take hold. And so I think you need some lead time before dark. So that would be, that was our thinking, to make it 6 o'clock, to be honest with you. I'm certainly respectful that the folks and businesses that this whole matter, business-wise, is hurting the most are those who were hurting already the most. And it's really a sad situation, and we want to be as helpful to them as possible. Going forward, if we have another night that's calm and quiet, in the event we have further curfews, but we certainly could consider moving it back a little bit. Councilmember Sacrum.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks, Councilwoman Jackson. That was part one of my question. Is it possible, or do we know the likelihood of another curfew tomorrow? They're just trying to schedule their staff and trying to figure out their operations. So are we and they're fine with another curfew. They just want to know. That's number one of my question. And number two would be, is it possible to get the data on the arrests and where these folks live? I'd like personally, I'm pretty sure that's public information at some point, but I'd like to know what state they're from. I'm hearing rumors that a lot of these folks were actually not from out of state.
Well, I had asked for that information before this meeting, but apparently they haven't compiled it all. SLED is helping us with that aspect of it. I did hear while I was at the police station last night on, I guess it was the initial 10 folks that had been arrested, that the majority were from the metro area of the 10, but only 2 were actually city of Charleston residents. There was a New York address from one, but the rest were spread across the Tri-County area.
Thank you.
But that's just a sample, and I hope by the end of the day we would have more complete information on all those arrests that have been made so far. But that's probably indicative that there's the vast majority of them are from the Tri-County area, but not from the city of Charleston. All right.
Mayor?
Councilmember Griffin.
Yes, sir. I was hoping that Chief Reynolds was going to be on the line.
Yeah.
Is he on yet? Do you know?
I haven't heard from him. I'll text him right now.
Because I've got some information that I've just given to him. One of the biggest one of the guys that was inciting the riot more than anybody posted a video online that I've sent to him, of him actually going in stores, stealing, inviting people to come out and join, mocking our police officers. And I pulled some information on him. I think it's a good idea, and I'd love to hear the chief's point of view on this, and I'm sure they're already doing it, but going after some of these guys during the day that we know were involved, if we've got their information, and making some additional arrests. The only way that we're going to get faith back in our community down on King Street and in our residents is to show that we're going to be diligent in continuing to not just make arrests by the people who are rioting on the night of, but following up with some of these dastardly cases. The people that have lit police cars on fire, and totally demolished our places down. I would just love to hear what our game plan is to go after some of these guys. And I personally am happy to assist in any way I can. I've sent the guy's address, his mugshot. He's out on bond. We need to get this guy arrested and get his bond revoked. It's ridiculous that they can post Facebook Live videos of them breaking in our stores and mock us and still be out with no punishment a couple days later. So anything I could do to help, I'm happy to. But we got to get guys behind bars immediately.
Well, absolutely. Our investigators are on it. SLED is working with us, as I mentioned a minute ago. Even the FBI is working with us. Just because someone didn't get arrested Saturday night doesn't mean by any stretch of the imagination that they won't be arrested. We are collecting video and other evidence from business owners. The College of Charleston had some that they offered us. And I, by way of this meeting, if anybody wants to share with the public, if you've got any information leading to the arrest of any perpetrator from the weekend, please turn it over to our police department. We will use it. We will pursue it. We will make arrests. And as I mentioned yesterday, we're taking every effort. We will not tolerate this kind of looting and violence going forward.
For somebody to come in from Goose Creek and come into the city of Charleston and tarnish it the way that they did, they need to be behind bars.
Thank you. Agreed. Councilmember Shade.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor and members of council, the chief made it abundantly clear at the press conference on Sunday, exactly what the mayor just said, that they are receiving information. They've got surveillance videos from different sources of folks, and they will follow up on their investigation and make the arrests they need to make. We need to let the police do their police work. We don't need to be telling them how to make the arrest or when to make the arrest. Let them follow up on the proper protocol with all of this. That's their job. That's why we have them out there. Let's assist them if we've got information, obviously, and forward them videos if we've come across them on social media or anywhere. But let the police do their work. That's why we have them out there, and let's assist them the way they needed us to assist them.
They're doing it.
They're doing it.
I can assure you that.
Hey, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir. Councilmember Bilger.
Yeah, in all due respect, I think it's very important that a lot of what we're talking about be private. I don't think that we should be alerting the enemy that we're looking for them. And I'm sure that our chief is going to be thorough. And he did say at the press conference that it's ongoing investigations. I think the last thing that we need to do as a council in this public forum is to alert the enemy as to what our strategy is.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Bell. Did you have your hand up? Maybe not.
No, Mr. Mayor, I think some other council members have addressed what I was going to talk about.
Yeah, great. All right. Any other questions or discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? The ayes have it. So I texted the chief, but he hadn't replied. So I just must say he must have gotten hung up. and not able to join us right now. He told me earlier today that he'd be able to. Any other discussion or any other topics that council would like to bring up? Councilmember Gregory and then Sacrum.
Mayor, I understand that keeping our city safe continues to be our #1 priority, but I don't want us to forget the positive nature of the daytime protests. I have never been more proud of our city when I observed that earlier daylight protest. A protest that was multiracial, multicultural, multi-age, multi-everything. I've never been more proud of white people than I was on Saturday when I observed the march. With the chants of white silence is violence, Black Lives Matter, we are one, this is how democracy works. I think somehow, in addition to making our city safe, we've got to be able to corral that positive energy that was displayed by Charlestonians on Saturday and Sunday. And Mayor, you made a very impassionate speech on yesterday. And one of the things that you talked about was the infrastructure that the city is putting in place to address many of the injustices that a people have had to endure. And one of the things you talked about was our apology for slavery. I think it's very important, Mayor, that our person who is responsible for making that resolution real needs to be a part of the conversation, or at least a part of our communications, because this is a great time, okay, for that division to not only talk about what happened during the riots, but also talk about what is happening to specific people with regard to the coronavirus. Be able to tell us, in addition to working with Tracy, okay, where we may have shortcomings in certain communities that may need testing. This is a rare moment, Mayor, at least in my opinion, for us to take that document, that resolution, and apply it to real-time events. Because I do think that at some point, that question is going to be raised. So I'm really asking, Mayor, that somehow we put that division or that office into the mix of perhaps just developing a white paper on all these issues and saying exactly what the city's position is with regard to them. I don't want us to miss this window to me of an unbelievable display of positive energy from this city. We were indeed not just Charleston strong, Mayor. We were one Charleston on Saturday and Sunday, and we showed that. So I just wanted to make that point during this discussion that we have a rare opportunity here to make our apology real and apply it to real time problems that we may have. Off my soapbox, Mayor, but I just had to get that out. I think we have a rare opportunity here.
Councilmember Gregory, that's a point well taken, not just for Amber Johnson, but for us as a collective city. And
Yeah.
be it coincidental, maybe I was reading your mind, or maybe you were reading my mind, but you know, Amber works in the legal department, and Susan and I had a conversation about just that this morning at 9:30. Susan, do you want to chime in?
Yes, sir. So we talked about obviously Amber's position and how she could be so helpful in putting together some neighborhood meetings with the police department and whoever else we think appropriate to sit down and have some discussions with neighborhoods. As everybody knows, Amber is our diversity manager and has been very helpful to our efforts over the last year since she's joined us. We also talked about the fact that it might be helpful to, you know, give updates to the community on the racial bias audit, and also to the public safety committee, who could then also brief city council on that. And so I have not had a chance to reach out to Councilmember Shade yet. I apologize. But we did talk about including that on as a committee item, and then a briefing of council by next Tuesday for next Tuesday's meeting. So those were some of the thoughts that the mayor and I had earlier today. But I know I'm happy to consider many others that you all might have.
That's right. So I had seen Councilmember Sackman's hand a little while ago, and I see a number of others up now, but let me go back to Councilmember Sackman.
Mr. Mayor,
Chief Reynolds on the line, so we do want to get back to him in a minute.
I can defer for a moment and turn it over to Police Chief.
Okay. And Griffin, Jackson, and Shade, are y'all good until we get a report from Chief Reynolds, or
Yes, sir.
to be recognized now?
Yeah. Let Chief
Mayor.
Reynolds do this thing, please.
Okay.
Mayor, I don't have anything additional to say. I just want to thank Councilmember Gregory while we're all here together and we have so many people from the public. Many of us have had these offside conversations with people who are white, black, and among ourselves. And it is time to live into the words of the apology with our heart and soul. So thank you, Councilmember Gregory. Anything you need from me to help you do that, I'm signing up right now with my push broom.
Gotcha. Okay.
So, Chief Reynolds, thank you for joining us. We've already passed the ordinance for tonight's curfew, and I tried to give, as best I could, an explanation about the reasoning on the timing, but and a little bit of a report. But if you'd like to chime in at this point, that'd be appropriate.
Sure. I'll just highlight a few things because I think there's been a lot of discussion in a lot of different places of the city, and I just did some media interviews, and I apologize for being a few minutes late. But one of the questions I've heard, and I'll just take it straight on, is the mayor give you a stand down order of some type not to make arrests. And I gotta say that that's one of the most preposterous, nonsensical things that I've ever heard in my life. I can promise you that the mayor never made such a statement to me. And in fact, I don't know anybody, and maybe some of the people on this call, who love this city and the people of this city more than our mayor. Irregardless of how people may feel, the mayor was very upset about what was going on, was very engaged and very much by my side as needed, in terms of making sure that I had the right resources, the ability to make the right decisions, the right connections at the state level, and any other things that I needed. And we discussed making arrests, and I can assure you that he wanted to make arrests more than anybody else that I've talked to so far. I've discussed that, and I'll be more than happy to answer any questions, but it's not as simple as that. And there's a lot more to this. But I just want people to know that that was not an accurate depiction. In matter of fact, it couldn't be more inaccurate and more further from the truth. The mayor wanted to do everything and everything possible to support us in keeping the city safe and saving lives and making sure nobody burned down our city. And I can tell you, he was probably sicker to his stomach than anybody else that I know in terms of the property damage and the impact on our businesses and everything else. And I think people just need to hear that, because I keep hearing that message. I don't know where it's coming from, but it's not correct. It's not accurate. We had more success last night, but I can tell you it wasn't an uneventful night. I think the curfew that you all created and supported and enacted served its purpose in a few different ways. One, it got people out of the city that really got caught up Saturday night, right? They didn't know that we were going to have those events. They got caught up, innocent people that really had no idea what was going on, got caught up in that riot, and that was a problem. By doing the curfew and doing it that early, we knew that if people, by getting the message out, by doing things on our bullhorns and social media and other things, if somebody was left in the city, at some point they were there not because they needed to be there or because they had a purpose, right? And those are the same people and some of the same faces that we saw creating havoc Saturday night. And so the curfew served its purpose. It was helpful. We were able to be a lot more proactive in an environment where there's a lot less people, a lot less good people in terms of those assemblies and gatherings. And so we were able to give multiple warnings. We were able to be present. We were able to show people and talk to people. And many people left as a result of that, even of the groups that were there yesterday. But at some point, we were able to give some warnings. And we have made a total of 62 arrests so far. About 10 of those or so was Saturday night. And then there was more yesterday. And because of this curfew, we had checkpoints throughout the city in different places. And we made some stops. I'll tell you, just one of them was people coming over the Ashley Bridge, the Lockwood Drive after the curfew, and they had a bag full of guns in their car, and they had no business being in the city, no purpose, and no reason to be coming into the peninsula. And that's just one of many examples. I think one of the questions Steve said that came up earlier in the discussion was, how are we going to follow up on these things? I just got a video from one of the council members. Thank you for sending that to me. And others have sent me things and made connections to other business owners who have videos. We are investigating every one of these crimes. We will be placing charges as we speak. Some of those cases are of people that were arson, theft, and looting will be some of the charges that will be placed. I've talked to my federal counterparts. I've spoken to Peter McCoy's office. He has reached out to me, the U.S. Attorney for the state of South Carolina. I spoke with his PIO and some other people this morning. I spoke with John Warrington, who's the FBI regional area director. And to the degree that may be an option, we're exploring that as well. I'm not saying that we're going to have anything that will qualify for that, but all of our partners in place, Scarlett Wilson have reached out to me. I've talked to Mark Keel, Chief Keel. The National Guard arrived last night. We have the assets coming our way. We have the assistance, and we will continue to investigate every one of these leads, and we will place charges in every one of these cases. I will tell you that there's people want to know where they're coming from, were they from out of town? The majority of the people, and this is just a general statement, we're still investigating this. We still have a long ways to go in the anatomy of this and finalizing and getting through this. But we do know that most of the people that were here creating these problems that we've been arresting are not from the city. Most of them are, though, from this region, from this Tri-County area. And some are from out of town. But a small number, I think we're going to find, are from out of town, and most of them are from this Tri-County region. I'll leave it at that, and I'll answer questions. But I think it's important that our city knows, that our residents know that we're paying attention, that we are focused on honoring and respecting people's rights to have a message, to exercise their First Amendment, to embrace and honor the Constitution. I think that's what America is all about, is allowing people to be heard. We did that with a peaceful event at 2:00 on Saturday. We will continue to do that. I'll just reiterate that I have made my own statement about the fact that I think it's deplorable what happened in Minneapolis, what's happened with Aubrey and the delays in making arrests in Georgia, what happened with the gentleman who was bird watching in New York City. And I could go on and on and on and on and talk about institutional racism on so many different levels in our city and in our state and in our nation. and people need to be heard. But we need people to do that peacefully, respectfully, and without destroying our city. We are not going to tolerate that. We're going to try to work and honor people's rights. But at the same time, if people want to be arrested, we're gonna make the arrest at a time of our choosing, in a place and a way of our choosing, and we will continue to do that until we are successfully through this crisis.
Thank you, Chief. Any questions for Chief Reynolds? Councilmember Shade.
Chief, I was trying to write down the number you gave us. There were 10 arrests made on Saturday night and 30 on Sunday night.
Approximately 10 on Saturday night and a total of 62 so far.
62?
Yes.
Thank you.
Councilmember Waring.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Chief. We could see all the collaboration from the different legal teams and legal allies. I mean, they came to bear yesterday, and I have the highest degree of respect for pulling that together. And certainly want to thank all of them for what they've done and certainly will do. Councilman Gregory is right. This approach about some of the things that people are voicing, we have addressed. And this is a good opportunity to let the world know, quite frankly, if they're willing to listen, of some of the steps that we've taken in the city of Charleston. Again, with the audit, the audit that was done wasn't done as a result of unrest. It was done because of coming together of minds being the right thing to do for our community. So putting up, and we took steps in our budget to hire this young lady to help us communicate better with all in the community. So thank you for bringing that up, Councilman Gregory. I also think we need to, and I know Mr. Mayor, I don't know, he's probably on the call, but I think when we stand in unison, we need to have Chief Curio not sitting on the side, but those first responders are just as important. And obviously, the way they responded in coordination with obviously quick response and putting out the fires that were attempted on that Saturday night. So. He's a key factor. That team is a key factor. Hopefully, asking for other help from other allied fire responders. I hope we never need that, but just in case, I'm sure that piece would be in place as well. So kudos, Chief, on having a better night. I know moving forward with the 6 o'clock p.m. today makes sense. And thank you all for keeping us in the loop. The last thing I want to say, Mr. Mayor, is I appreciate your involvement in this. I appreciate all 12 council members pushing in the same direction, because there are those, and the chief has alluded to some, but there are those out there who's playing from the Monday morning playbook. And that's when, after the fact, everybody's smart after the fact. It is the steps you take. If they can tell us what's going to happen tomorrow, would be fabulous. So this isn't a time to splinter. This is a time to get informed, as our chief is informing us and the mayor's informing us, and certainly the allies to the process, Chief Curio and others, Chief Sheriff Cannon and all. We are all on the same page in trying to make this region safe, because that's what we're really talking about. We've already been told about how they went up in Tanga Outlet trying to do the same thing up there. So being able to push together for a region, for a city, for a country, frankly, without pointing fingers at one another. I'm proud of each and every one of you. So thanks for what you're doing, Chief. Thanks for what you're doing, Mayor, and all my council members. Thank you.
God bless. And I couldn't agree more. The cooperation of the police and the fire department has been really remarkable. And I don't know if Chief Courier is on the line. We have certainly tried at every public announcement to share that fact. And but for the training and courage of our fire department, Saturday night could have been a completely different result. They were out there all night long, putting out little fires that could have become big fires, right? And I was down at the Emergency Operations Center both nights, and we have personnel from the fire department embedded right there with in the operations center, and there's complete communication and collaboration going on between the two departments. And it's really, you know, a beautiful thing to behold. Councilmember Mitchell.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I like to agree with all my colleagues what they were saying, and give the chief, the fire department, and all our first responders, and all the people that came in to help us, and they did a marvelous job. I went out yesterday and drove through, and you know I can't stay home most of the time anyway. So, but on the east side, as you know, we had a little problem with the fire. People burning, trying to block up America Street, and I watched how the police department came through. But somewhere down the line, I don't know how we can get to be able to speak to these young people, even in the city of Charleston, letting them know that what they're doing, they're hurting themselves. Because my take on it, and they might get angry with me, but all those people that's on that public housing that was involved in those fire, burning those fire in the middle of America Street, from Stewart Street almost to Harris Street, with the video that they have online on Facebook that I was watching, they don't know that they will probably be evicted when they find out this information comes up. And we are talking about in the city of Charleston trying to push and build affordable housing for individuals who need it. And they know that HUD is not HUD the way it was years ago. And it kind of hurt me when I saw that yesterday, and how much I spend my time over there trying to communicate with them and trying to educate them. And the same thing as when they burnt the Family Dollar, as you know, Mayor, that was a desert over there until we pushed hard to get the Family Dollar to open back up. Now it's closed again. So there's a desert again. So they're hurting a lot of people, even a lot of seniors that's over there, that now have to try to shuffle back down to Food Line or Harris Teeter again. So all these things we are playing in. So people are saying a whole lot of things on air. You could have done it this way, you could have done it that way. No one can project what's going to happen in the future. And if I had known that, I would have tried to stop it myself. And you couldn't even project it. The chief wouldn't even know that, you see. So we did the best we can, and I hope people would look at it and deep down in their heart and soul and see that we did the best we can in trying to keep the city of Charleston safe and the community safe. Thank you.
God bless. Councilmember Saccharin, back to you.
Thanks, Mayor. I just wanted to also commend everyone, in particular, the fire and police out doing what they could in the community. And I wasn't going to mention this today, and Councilman Gregory's comments to me are quite timely. I've had a very personally, and most of us have had a very difficult time rationalizing what has occurred in our city and how to have a conversation with our African-American brothers and our Hispanic brothers, and you're not sure what to say and how to say it. And I realize we've made significant improvements in our city. But to me, there's more to this than a two-sided right or wrong argument. And this might not sound popular, but if it's not that simple. And I would just ask all of us to think about the past 5 years in our nation's history and look at it from a perspective other than ourselves, in particular here in Charleston. We've had the tragedy at Mother Emanuel, killing of Walter Scott, Michael Brown, Laquan McDonald, Freddie Gray, Tamir Rice, Philando Castile, Eric Garner, Ahmaud Arbery, and last week's despicable killing of George Floyd. And there are more. I sat last night and had to Google how many African Americans were killed unjustly in our country, and the list goes on. Incident after incident, and year after year, nothing has changed. And let me be clear, those that killed many of the men that I mentioned have served no time and no justice was served. So my point is, when you couple these heinous acts with the bubbling tensions we've had in our city and nation, and then you add the national pandemic, where millions of people, regardless of their race, have simply been hurting beyond measure, I don't see how Saturday was a one-off. The fuse was ready to blow. And I'm not condoning what happened, but I just want to be clear. The violence we saw in our city was despicable. But I think we have to understand that that was language that we heard. That was anger coming from folks. And maybe these folks are misplaced, but we have to understand that that came from a place of utter desperation. I think we have an opportunity, as Councilman Gregory said, we have an opportunity to do something, but, and this may not sound popular either. A lot of the stuff that I feel like we are trying to do is purely symbolic. And I think the anger and frustration needs to be significant policy changes. Anything we try to do symbolically needs to be attached to something that we are going to do boldly and innovatively as a city. Because I think the anger and frustration comes not just from the lack of injustice on the criminal side, I think it comes from economic injustice. When you have nothing left, I'm sorry, smashing buildings and getting arrested is the least of your concerns. And I have spoken to many in the community, African, white, young, and old, and that is the sentiment that I continue to hear. And that's why I asked the question early, please tell me how many of these folks were outsiders. And I think the overwhelming sentiment earlier in the weekend was we had some outside groups coming in. And what I'm hearing is these are our folks. These are folks that live in our region. And it's our responsibility to make sure that they're heard. So I just want to say thank you to Councilman Gregory for bringing that up. But I think we've got more work to do than just passing ordinances and symbolic measures. We got to address the needs. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Sackman. All right, Councilmember Shade.
Yeah, thank you, Max. I had deferred to the chief, and I wanted to follow up, particularly with what Councilmember Gregory had brought to our attention, and Councilman Waring and now Councilman Sackman and Jackson have talked about. Unfortunately, the violence on Saturday knocked us off track a little bit. We need to have people walking in our streets. We need to have people having rallies and bringing to our attention the lack of justice that many of our citizens feel with our systems. I wanted to participate Saturday afternoon at 2 o'clock, and I got tied up with a client at my office. And I heard that my son was involved in that. He participated in that march, and you said it was a beautiful thing. Folks need to be heard. Folks need to express themselves. We've had a series of events that have taken place throughout the country that have triggered this anger and this frustration. When George Floyd's face was embedded in that concrete and he was saying, "I can't breathe," he was speaking for a lot of people. A lot of people feel like they can't breathe. They feel like they're suffocated. They feel like someone's knee is in their neck, holding them down, and they're not getting justice. That they can't have an opportunity to just live, or an opportunity to advance, or an opportunity to just have decent housing, or a decent education, or a decent job. He was speaking loudly in a more passionate voice that ended his life, unfortunately. But something he was saying resonated to me, and I think to a lot of people in the world, which had brought out, "I can't breathe." And I think that what Councilmember Gregory is mentioning, and Councilmember Sackman just talked about, is we need to hear that extremely loud and clear. And we can pass ordinances and we can do things of symbolic nature, but we've got to have a very open and a very honest discussion of what is going on in our community. And we've got to come up with very concrete, strategic ways to change things in our community. Back in many years ago, we're talking about our first Earth Day. The slogan was, "Think globally, act locally." But we can apply that sort of same kind of mentality to our community. We have to think globally what's going on in our country, in our world. But we have to start acting locally to make those changes concrete. And we need to have this discussion. We need to have these rallies. We need to have these marches, and we need to have things that we're doing to address inequities in our community and make them happen. And maybe we start off with the slave apology and part of that resolution that we passed on some of those concrete changes that need to be taking place. But as Councilmember Gregory pointed out, unfortunately, we got sidetracked Saturday night. and we've been reacting to the rioting and the violence. But let's not let that get us off track. We need to get back on track with what those voices are saying to us, and we need to hear that and move forward. I wish I had the answer to how do we start all that process, but I'm on board with it. I think we need to start talking about that and getting it on track. Susan, I'm ready. Whatever you want to bring to the Public Safety Committee, we're here to facilitate that. Let's get working on that. We got a lot of work to do. We've got so much on our plate, I know, but this has got to rise to the top of our priority list. Thank you all for y'all's thoughts on all this. I really do appreciate it. And hopefully we will turn this into something more solid and concrete. Thank you.
Councilmember Waring, thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Sacrament and Shige. You know, there's several conversations that has to take place. And a lot of people say we've already had enough conversations, and I'm with that too. But the reality is the way change occurs is through conversations. Sunday morning, when we all came down there to help clean up, there are a number of, I'm gonna say, local activists that were at Marion Square. We had sidebar conversations with an African American to another African American. Several out of North Charleston were telling me this is a fuse, Councilman Sacrament, and this fuse has been building for 400 years, and now the chickens are coming home to roost. And I told them, I can't go there with you, brother. And let me tell you why. The people that I saw running up and down this street, none of them were 400 years old. They don't have that oppression for 400 years. 98% of the people out there are well-meaning people. But we have that 1 to 2% that is a criminal element. And what we saw with those who, and I've looked at it a second time with some of the film that we have from online. Some of them were very happy to pick up those granite blocks and throw it into those windows time and time again. That's a criminal element. They came to create mayhem, and they infiltrated themselves in with heartfelt, good-meaning young people and a very diverse group. And Councilman Gregory, I'm proud of what some of the things that were said up there. And those young folk are still continuing, not just young, but just the better element of our community coming forward doing that. But that criminal element has to be acknowledged and has to be dealt with. Even if you go back to the days of Jim Crow and you come forward with the civil rights movement, the gains for African Americans towards equal citizenship in this country came through the courts. It didn't come from setting Watts on fire. It came through the courts. And we have a very unique community here. Who would forget the Unity March in Charleston after Mother Emanuel spanning across the Ravenel Bridge? We know the betterment part is our community. So the part about how do we get to the worst of it, we're gonna be able to do that collectively, get to the worst of it. Look at ourselves. When we wanted to do this audit and racial biasness of our police department, in part, if we're honest with ourselves, that's why our current chief of police at the time left. Oh, he retired. He didn't want that audit. There were hard conversations to be had. We all had to evolve toward that. The mayor had to evolve on that. You had to evolve, Peter, on that. We had those conversations, and all of us are better now as a result of that. So when we look at the larger picture, we can rise above. And this city has risen above and will continue to rise above. Our mayor has, Peter, you have, I have. You have pointed out things to me I looked at differently. Councilman Sacrament, raising what he just raised today. All that makes us a little bit better. But you know why? Because we don't represent that criminal element out there. But when you get in those conversations, in particular with stakeholders who happen to be white, and we are not around, that's when that betterment has to rise to the top. And by the same token, when African Americans are in our groups and racist things are said, I'll give an example. A few weeks ago, I was in Ashleyville, Mr. Mayor, and a white couple happened to ride through, and it looked like to me, I mean, I don't know whether they're married or not, but I thought they were married, rode through on their bikes going back towards what will be called Richardson Park. when they came through in the bike, I was talking to a person I've known since first grade. I hailed them. Well, when they went through, he asked me, "Why'd you hail them?" I said, "Why didn't you hail them?" He said, "All they're trying to do is come and buy up our neighborhood." And I told him, we can't do to them what they used to do to us. So that's why we have federal fair housing laws. So in part, we talk about gentrification, but gentrification in a place where African Americans already own property, you cannot be forced off of your property. If you chose to sell, you made that choice. If you chose to build, again, you made that choice. But there were no white folk around when I had that conversation with my lifelong friend to say that, more importantly, why didn't you heal? These people don't mean us any harm, okay? Well, the same token, when you go over in the white community and you hear your friends and sometimes family members say racist statements. I'll give you one other example. My wife and family was sitting down talking. We had kids had a friend who happened to be white, and my son had a friend who happened to be Chris. Our children, now they're adults now, but our children used to refer to them as white boy Chris, and the black Chris was referred to as Chris. And the way my wife slammed her fist on that table, I hope I have some strength like that sometime. Our children never did that again. Never referred to white boy Chris and African American Chris as just being black. That's where it's cured. And those little local corners like that. And the so-called white boy Chris, when my mother died, he rode in the family car with us to the funeral. Okay. So how are we going to cure that? The city of Charleston, when Councilmember Lewis's grandson was handcuffed and thrown up against the wall recently, he could have broken his neck. He could have had his neck broken doing that. Got out, spoke out against it, still advocating for a racial audit in North Charleston 5 years after a human being was shot in the back. 5 years after that, we still advocating for that. Why? Not to play gotcha, not to say I told you so, for a better police department that we all enjoy in this region. It makes no sense for us to have a very good professional police department. Our police department is interlinked, and we see this, we saw it yesterday with all these law enforcement officers, divisions around here, and we benefit from that. So Councilman Saccharin, you're right. Councilman Shayed, you're right. Mr. Mayor, you're right. Right now, I would say right now, when it comes to being considerate and open-minded and trying to move forward with what is right for this country, the government that's most effective is the government that's closest to you. It's this government right here. So never take these seats for granted. I appreciate I had more than my time to talk on this, but I'm proud of you, Councilman Saccharin. I'm proud of you, Councilman Shayed. I'm proud of all of you guys. You know why? Because I feel if somebody caught you off in a sidebar conversation and says things in left field without being prompted, you are going to correct that. And that's how leadership moves forward together. So I think we all got a little emotional on this one, but we're doing the right things in the city of Charleston. We need to let more people know the things that we're doing. And that's all I think Councilman Gregory was initially started us on this track. Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you all.
Thank you. Wow. So lots of good conversation there amongst us. I thank you all. Any further comments or business to come before council this afternoon? There will be a curfew on the peninsula of Charleston beginning at 6 o'clock. Everybody be safe, and we'll be in touch with you all tomorrow. And we're just taking this a day at a time right now. I know some folks would like to plan it out. If we have a good night tonight, then maybe we can either extend the time later or maybe not have it. Let's assess it tonight. We'll get back tomorrow. God bless you all. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Mayor.